to our behavior change project. We are Marissa, Ellen, Stephanie, and Casey. Our original study that we replicated was called the Preliminary Efficacy of Prize-Based Contingency Management to Increase Activity Levels in Healthy Adults. This was by Washington, Bana, and Gibson in 2014. This is the link to our PDF, which will also be given in our discussion board. The original study details, there were 15 healthy adult participants, kind of a small sample size, but it was pretty equal between male and female. It used reinforcement procedure to increase daily activity minutes and step count of participants. Pretty familiar with Fitbit, they use activity minutes and step counts. And they used an ABA reversal design. So as you can remember from our coursework, that's baseline, the treatment of reinforcement, and then return to baseline. And the original study used 1 week phases for each phase. The baseline phase reinforcement consisted of randomly choosing verbal praise versus the actual tangible reinforcement. And that was just contingent upon wearing the Fitbit so that you actually got the data for that baseline. And the intervention phase, the reinforcement consisted of the same, definitely just randomly choosing verbal praise or tangible prizes, but the prizes were much more in magnitude. So they ranged it from $5 to $120 worth of prizes. The results, there was definitely an overall increase in the average step count across all participants and active minutes. And they found in their study that there was no significant difference between the baselines, between the original baseline and then the return to baseline. So to test the effect of behavior change principles or reinforcement, that was the purpose of the study, right? To see if these healthy adults participants' active minutes and step behavior actually increased upon implementing this procedure, and to test it using an accelerometer, right? So basically something that's not that expensive for participants, so pretty low cost option for adults to increase that behavior.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. I'm Casey Corbridge. So why did we choose this study? The big reason why we chose this study, kind of going through these, is cost effectiveness. This was a study that we already had a lot of the materials. Everybody has some form of an accelerometer, and so we're already able to track our steps to some degree. And so we didn't have to invest anything additional in order to do that, which, as poor college students, is quite beneficial to us. It was also chosen because of the applied nature of it. It's very applicable to our lives. We're all kind of could use an added benefit of exercise in our lives, and so that really helped us choose this study in addition. And it's also a very simple and very short study. The study only lasted for about 3-4 weeks initially, and so it really fit into our time frame that we wanted this to work in, and it was shown to be effective in that short period of time. So it was really a very important factor, kind of, for us to have those that short time and to be able to show the efficacy in the study as well as the replication that we're doing. So that was the reason we really chose the study. In addition, we had to do some modifications to the study. We did not calculate the inter-response time because we did not possess that technology with that, and we didn't have the ability to spend the extra. We also used a varying one. The original study literally only used Fitbits. We actually also used our cell phones, which have accelerometers in them, if we didn't have the Fitbit. And again, that was to increase that cost-effective nature. And then the magnitude of the reinforcement. We didn't go to the $120 reinforcements that the initial study did, because we don't have that amount of money in order to be able to do so. And so we really wanted to kind of tone that down for our financial capability and maintain the effectiveness of that. And then, of course, the phase lengths varied according to that data analysis. So our phase was changed. Instead of it being a week on, a week off, as the main study, it was it varied a little bit more due to our instructions.
Okay, hey guys. So I'm going to kind of talk about the method as well as our behavior definitions and kind of define those for you. So first, our participants, there were 4 of us, 3 female, 1 male, all obviously graduate students and healthy adults. And each of us completed this project throughout our daily life, including work and home. So, you know, just kind of continued our normal activities of life. And the materials that we used was an accelerometer, which we've been talking about, and then our 3 behaviors that we kind of tracked and, you know, applied our intervention to were active minutes, steps, and bouts. So I'll kind of go in depth about the 3 of them to give you guys a better idea of what exactly it is. So an active minute is kind of what it sounds like, defined as a minute that an individual exerts energy of or at or above 3 metabolic equivalent units. So it could be walking, running, you know, jogging, hiking, any of those type of things that you're actively walking, doing an activity. And then for a step, it's like what you think of like taking a step. So like an individual's movement to increase their acceleration level. So, you know, the onset of that would be the first occurrence of that behavior, and then the offset would be the absence of that behavior occurring. And then for our last behavior definition, it was about, and it is a series of steps lasting longer than a minute. So, you know, if you went running for 20 minutes, or you went for a bike ride, or like jogging or hiking, something that lasted a longer period of time. So those were kind of the 3 operational definitions that we were using throughout the study.
I was muted, sorry. So just continuing the methods, we collected the data through the accelerometer. So it's the Fitbit and the cell phone were able to calculate and collect those steps as we did them. This allowed us to collect fairly neutral and fairly consistent data across the board. And in addition to that, we did the ABA reversal. We had the baseline phase, the intervention phase, and then we returned to our baseline. In that baseline phase, we also included a daily data for the daily steps, the active minutes, and the bouts. And that baseline phase lasted 1 week. During that phase, there was a reinforcer given, where it was 50% social reinforcement and a 50% tangible reinforcement, and that was specifically for wearing the accelerometer or keeping it on you at all times. If you kept it on you for the entire period, then we redeemed different rewards and prizes. Excuse me. There were 10 verbal praise tickets and $5 worth of tickets that make up the reinforcement prize boxes during those baseline phases. Then we drew from the box on every 3rd day of the baseline phase. And we tried to match all of the prizes across the board in all of the houses so that it was an equal playing field and an equal situation. And then in the treatment phase, the Fitbit was again worn at all times, or the accelerometer in some fashion. The intervention phase, it lasted 1 full week. and then we calculated the steps, the active minutes, and the bouts in those days as well. On those days, there was also a reinforcement given, which matched across the whole group, and that was allowed to, or that was based on increased performance and continuing to wear that Fitbit as well. So for our IOA and our treatment integrity, we maintained the treatment fidelity by training all of our participants, so us, on the definition and of the different definitions that we have set and we already talked about. In addition, we've also trained our accountability partners, which was a spouse, a roommate, somebody that was in the presence of us at all times, in order to make sure that, or not at all times, but at frequent times, in order to make sure that we were always, or that we were often following those plans. The accountability partner also took physical data 5 times throughout the study, monitoring us and watching our progress. That allowed us to compare that data against the Fitbit data and make sure that we were actually getting these active bouts and the different active minutes accurate according to the initial study and according to the comparison of those two. Well, there was also a group accountability factor in which we did discuss with each other weekly, and we submitted that we submitted to a discussion when we earned our rewards, when we completed the steps, and when we switched between different phases and such. And then the participants that we had were available in an open forum before we did that baseline. So it wasn't just us, it was also our accountability partners' questions and everything, and made sure that everything that was potentially going to be a problem with data collection, that was all included in the situation and included in the discussion. All right.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of talk about my personal data. So as you can see, for like my baseline phase, for the amount of steps that I was engaging in taking per day, was significantly lower than the intervention phase. So when I was receiving positive reinforcement. And then it was kind of cool to see that even when we returned back to baseline during that phase of the study, my data wasn't as low as my original baseline data, but it also wasn't as high as the intervention portion of it as well. So you can obviously see like positive reinforcement definitely increased my behavior, you know, increasing those steps, and definitely if you look at the second or like the lower graph, increase those active minutes. I was like regularly being like, okay, I need to up those minutes, so I need to go do something that is something for a longer period of time, so I'm getting those steps in. So it was really cool to see that, you know, positive reinforcement definitely has a huge impact on increasing your behavior, and for me the treatment worked. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Ellen. As you can see, my results here, I got my table, baseline, intervention, return to baseline data. My results were kind of similar. I definitely had an increase at first with our treatment phase, but what I found interesting was that my return to baseline wasn't really a return to baseline levels. And I think there's definitely a little bit of irreversibility there, right? Where I was starting to get that automatic reinforcement of actually exercising, right? And so it wasn't necessarily the positive reinforcement, but kind of my own like internal dialogue and like internal goals. So that was interesting. I think, you know, maybe if I were to take it today, it wouldn't be the same, but definitely that kind of week after, those results seem to stay. And I think, you know, with the data analysis, I noticed that I kind of would have wanted that intervention phase to kind of go a little longer, but I feel like with the time restraints of the project, I wasn't really like able to, right? I had to return to baseline to show. But, you know, I am pretty confident that if that had continued, I would have seen kind of the same trend.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. So as noted in the figures that are listed here in the PowerPoint, my active minutes and my daily step count actually increased as a result of implementing the intervention. Because my baseline data in the first phase proved to demonstrate fairly consistent results, it made transitioning into the intervention phase fairly easy. And then due to the nature of the Fitbit application I utilized throughout the process, I actually found the act of analyzing my data and visually witnessing my progress to be extremely reinforcing. And I'm a pretty naturally competitive person with myself and others, so the application actually allowing me to see the progress that I have made and connecting me to the progress of the people in our group and even my friends outside of the group who use Fitbits was really like motivating to me. So if my best friend or like Ellen or Marissa were hitting a higher target than I was and they were like at 10,000, then for me that's naturally more motivating to me because I'm so competitive. So through the study I also noticed that I tend to be a lot lazier on the weekends and notice significant drops, specifically on Saturdays, which is when I'm more likely to sleep in. And I tend to move a lot throughout the work week and after work at nights. But during the weekend, I tend to be a little bit more lazy. But because I found the app to be so reinforcing, it actually seems to me that while the intervention of positive reinforcement looks like it did work, I think that the positive reinforcement for me served as more of a backup reinforcer than my like primary reinforcer or my motivation to commit to the study. Yeah, so.
Hello again. So if you notice in my study, just looking at it, or in my results, mine was definitely affected quite noticeably through the study. Specifically, it was noted that during the intervention, I was much higher. I can attribute this at least partially to my partner's encouragement throughout it, and definitely keeping me very rigid on the rewards and such, and focusing on that. That really helped me be aware of it. But when I went back to baseline, that secondary reinforcer of my wife being there and helping me remember the rewards kind of went away really quickly there. I still maintained close to baseline. I dropped a little below baseline. One day I actually was driving a lot that day, and so I noticeably had lower numbers and lower active minutes. In fact, I didn't have any actual time active during that because of that situation. But that kind of fits that whole line, and that fits the bill there. I thought that was a really cool kind of thing to see, that really did affect me, and it did affect me. A lot of the social aspects, kind of as we've talked about, really affected me as well in the results. So now we're going to kind of talk about how we did with the IOA and the treatment fidelity. So as we talked about before, we were all trained on that operational definition and on that data collection, and make sure that we were collecting it very well. The accountability partners took that data 5 times throughout the process. During that, we all submitted our data together. It was compared against our accelerometer data, and then it was calculated into a percentage of 86% inter-observer agreement, which was really interesting to us that it was off there. It shows that difference between the accelerometer and actually watching and observing, and so that was there. We also verified the participants' data, and validated it through sharing screenshots of our devices, and a description of the prize, or a picture of the prize that we drew when we reached our criteria at the end of every period, at the end of every week. And so we did that consistently. We made sure that we were all communicating, and that that the communication was very solid and regular in that process.
All right. So we're going to talk about some of the limitations for this study due to the variation in age, weight, activity level, and overall health and technology that we used within the study. The results kind of have the opportunity to demonstrate variation in the effectiveness for each participant. And while it's assumed that all individuals claiming to wear the Fitbit in the study were actually the person wearing the Fitbit, there is no way for us to verify who was actually wearing the accelerometer or the Fitbits throughout this study. Thus, like, for example, a more active person could have been instructed to wear the Fitbit by the original participant, but there is no way to actually verify which individual was generating our data. As in the original study, there were 3 phases of intervention. There was baseline, intervention, and return to baseline. The original study spanned for a duration of about 3 weeks, and our group chose to replicate this duration to maintain the integrity of the study and to try to maintain higher levels of reliability across our own participants. Because the phase lengths were pretty condensed down to 7 days per phase, the data trends may have varied a little bit across participants. As the participants in this study were accountable for providing technological resources, financial and tangible resources in the form of the reinforcement and the accelerometers themselves. We are also overseeing the study and providing data analysis. The results of our study may reflect biases which may or may not have been presented in the original study. Additionally, because of the restrictions or the variations from the original study, the results may demonstrate that these biases reflect different findings from the original study. Because participants were responsible for providing their own reinforcement, it may be possible that the effect of the reinforcers may or may not have been identified for each individual participant, and the reinforcement chosen by each individual participant may have varied in magnitude and effectiveness. Moving on to the conclusion. In concluding our study, it's important to note that the intervention of positive reinforcement did prove to effectively increase engagement in the target behaviors of active minutes, steps, and bouts for all participants. And while variation in results occurred across all participants exhibited observable and measurable behavior change throughout the duration of the study. The results indicated that all participants demonstrated a greater increase in engagement with the target behaviors in the return to baseline phase than in the original study. And while this does demonstrate that our intervention was successful, it doesn't necessarily demonstrate that there was a functional relationship, as the return to baseline data did vary across all of our participants, and the pools of participants in our study was considerably smaller than that of the original study, as they had 15 participants. Okay, and then moving on, we also have our contribution log here. As a group, we worked pretty well together to try to remain flexible with each other's schedules and be aware of each other's time zones, which can be a little tricky when we're all around the world, I guess. Throughout our project, we were able to check in through phone, text, Google Hangouts, instant message, email, and video to ensure that all of our portion was completed on time. Google Hangouts, email, and texting actually proved to be the most effective methods of communication for our group. Every week we delegated specific tasks to complete throughout the duration of this assignment and communicated to the rest of the group if we did have questions or concerns, which came up somewhat often. And a few of the delegated tasks are actually listed in the chart. So as a group, we worked really hard to meet our goals and try to work together to complete the assignments and make sure that we are on track with the study. So while we're still navigating the challenges of learning how to effectively replicate the study, this assignment definitely proved to be challenging for us and it has taught us concepts and practices, which I know some of us haven't participated in before. And these are our references for your viewing pleasure. At this point in time, we would like to conclude our presentation and open the floor for discussion and questions.
Okay, if you want to go off the
Yeah, okay.